Have you ever watched someone you love slowly disappear from your life without leaving their chair? In 2025, over 1/3 of seniors wake up each morning to complete silence. No phone calls, no visitors, no meaningful conversations. It's not just loneliness anymore. It's a hidden epidemic that increases their risk of heart disease and depression while quietly destroying the lives of millions of older adults. What's even more heartbreaking is that most families don't realize what's happening until it's too late. These aren't just statistics. They're real people facing invisible struggles that nobody talks about. Today we're exposing the 12 daily realities that seniors are living through right now, starting with the most surprising one. The silent epidemic of digital isolation. Julie sits at her kitchen table every morning with her coffee and watches her phone stay silent. She knows her family is talking. She knows they're sharing photos of her great-grandchildren's first steps, planning surprise birthday parties, and discussing holiday arrangements. She knows because when she finally gets that weekly phone call from her daughter, she hears fragments of conversations that happened days ago in group chats she can't access. Her son set up a smartphone for her 2 years ago with the best intentions. He showed her how to make calls and take pictures, but when he tried to explain group messaging, video calls, and family sharing apps, her mind went blank. The buttons seemed to multiply before her eyes. The screen moved too fast. Every tap brought up something unexpected. She nodded and smiled, pretending to understand, but when he left, she put the phone in a drawer and went back to her old flip phone. Technology became the family's primary language, while Julie remained fluent only in phone calls and face-to-face conversations. Her granddaughter sends videos to the family chat that everyone finds hilarious. Her nephew shares job updates and relationship news in real time. Her great-grandchildren's soccer games get live commentary from parents who can't attend. Julie discovers these moments happened when someone mentions them in passing during her scheduled phone calls. But by then, the excitement has faded and the moment feels stale. Research shows that 54% of older adults feel socially isolated, and Julie experiences this reality daily. These aren't seniors who refuse to adapt. These are grandparents who want desperately to stay connected, but find themselves locked out of the digital spaces where their families now live. Julie's isolation compounds when she misses her grandson's college graduation announcement because it only went to the family group chat. She finds out 3 weeks later during a routine call from her daughter, who assumes she already knows. The shame burns in her chest as she realizes she missed sending congratulations, missed asking about his plans, missed being part of the celebration in real time. Her granddaughter's engagement photos circulated for days among family members who commented and shared excitement, but Julie saw them for the first time printed out and handed to her during a visit. The cascading effects multiply. Birthday reminders now come through calendar apps and group chat notifications. Family reunions get planned through shared documents and polls. Emergency updates about health scares or urgent news spread instantly through family networks. But Julie remains in the dark until someone remembers to call her directly. She becomes the afterthought, the person who gets filled in later rather than included in the moment. The shame she carries grows heavier each day. Julie worked as a bank teller for 37 years, managing complex transactions and helping customers with financial technology. She raised 4 children, managed a household budget, and navigated every challenge life threw at her. But now she feels stupid because she can't figure out how to join a video call or respond to a text message with a photo attached. The woman who taught her children to be resourceful and figure things out now feels too embarrassed to admit she needs help with something her 8-year-old great-grandson does effortlessly. Her body begins responding to this digital isolation in ways she doesn't immediately connect. Her sleep becomes restless as she lies awake wondering what family news she missed that day. She checks her old flip phone repeatedly, hoping for calls that don't come because everyone assumes she's connected to the family chat. Her appetite decreases as meals become solitary experiences without the social connection that digital communication provides for her family. She finds herself feeling anxious about family gatherings, worried she'll reveal how much she doesn't know about recent family events. The physical symptoms intensify when she realizes her family's communication patterns have completely shifted. Her daughter used to call twice a week, but now calls every other week. because she stays updated on Julie's life through brief responses to family group messages. Her son assumes she's seeing the photos he shares of his kids because he posts them to the family chat daily. The grandchildren think she's not interested in their lives because she doesn't respond to their messages with heart emojis and encouraging comments like everyone else. A cruel misunderstanding develops that neither side recognizes. Julie's family believes she prefers traditional phone calls and doesn't want to be bothered with constant digital communication. They respect what they perceive as her preference for less frequent, more meaningful conversations. Meanwhile, Julie interprets their reduced phone calls as evidence that they don't want to talk to her anymore. She assumes they find her boring or burdensome, not realizing they think they're being considerate by not overwhelming her with technology. The emotional distance grows as Julie becomes increasingly disconnected from the daily rhythms of her family's life. She misses the small moments that build intimacy, the shared jokes that develop over time, the ongoing conversations that create closeness. When she does talk to family members, she feels like an outsider catching up on stories rather than someone who's been part of the ongoing narrative. Julie's situation represents a massive shift in how families communicate, and millions of seniors find themselves on the wrong side of this digital divide. The technology that promises to connect families is actually creating unprecedented isolation for the generation that needs connection most. These seniors aren't rejecting modern communication out of stubbornness. They're drowning in complexity while their families assume they're choosing simplicity. The most heartbreaking aspect of Julie's story is how easily it could be solved. Patient teaching, simplified communication plans, and family members who understand the learning curve could bridge this gap. Voice-to-text features, large button keyboards, and simplified messaging apps designed for seniors offer pathways to inclusion. Video calling tutorials, family tech support sessions, and gradual introduction of new features could help seniors like Julie rejoin family conversations. But pride prevents Julie from asking for help, and assumptions prevent her family from recognizing her isolation. She continues sitting at her kitchen table each morning, drinking coffee in silence while her family shares their lives in digital spaces she can't access. The connection she craves exists just beyond her reach, blocked not by physical distance but by the fear of admitting she needs help learning the language her family now speaks fluently. Yet digital isolation is just one layer of the daily anxiety that keeps seniors awake at night, worrying about problems that feel impossible to solve. The invisible weight of financial anxiety. Robert wakes up at 3:17 a.m. and his mind immediately starts calculating. His pension check was $2,847 last month. His Social Security brought in another $1,923. The house payment is $1,156. Property taxes went up again this year to $347 monthly. He has $127,000 in his savings account, money he accumulated through 42 years of working at the power plant and living below his means. On paper, Robert should sleep peacefully. Instead, he reaches for the calculator on his nightstand and starts the math again. The numbers that keep him awake aren't the ones in his bank account. They're the ones at the grocery store, the gas station, and the pharmacy. His electric bill jumped from $89 to $156 over the winter. The same hamburger meat that cost $4.99 a pound last year now costs $7.49. His blood pressure medication increased from $23 to $41 for a month's supply when his insurance changed formularies. Every price increase feels like a personal attack on his financial security. Robert's morning routine starts with checking his bank balance online. He logs in before his first cup of coffee, scanning the account for any unexpected charges or automatic payments he might have forgotten. He checks it again after breakfast, then once more before lunch. The balance rarely changes between these checks, but the ritual provides a temporary sense of control over finances that feel increasingly unpredictable. This compulsive checking behavior reflects the broader anxiety that research shows affects many seniors, with studies indicating that 28% reported worse anxiety during the pandemic as financial pressures mounted. His trips to the grocery store have become exercises in comparison shopping and mental arithmetic. He walks the aisles with a calculator app open on his phone, comparing price per ounce between brands he never bothered to consider before. A jar of peanut butter that once took 30 seconds to select now requires 5 minutes of analysis. He finds himself buying smaller sizes of items to reduce the immediate cost, even though he knows the per unit price is higher. The psychological relief of spending $3.49 instead of $6.99 outweighs the mathematical logic. Robert's anxiety manifests in a pattern of declining invitations and avoiding activities that once brought him joy. When his daughter invites him to dinner at a restaurant, he calculates the cost of the meal, the gas to drive there, and the expected tip. The total might be $35, money he can easily afford, but the expense feels frivolous when he's spent the week agonizing over the price of groceries. He starts making excuses, claiming he's not feeling well or has other plans, rather than admitting the cost concerns him. His monthly poker game with friends becomes a source of stress rather than entertainment. The $10 buy-in hasn't changed in 3 years, but Robert now sees it as money that should go toward his increasing utility bills. He skips the game twice, then 3 times, until his friends stop calling. His absence from social activities isn't about the money itself, but about the mental energy he spends calculating and recalculating whether he can afford these small pleasures. Robert's fixed income creates a psychological trap where every price increase feels like a pay cut. His pension and social security remain stable, but they lose purchasing power as inflation drives up the cost of everything he needs. The hamburger meat, the gasoline, the prescription medications, and the property taxes all increase while his income stays the same. He experiences this as becoming poorer each month, even though his savings account balance remains steady. The grocery store becomes a battlefield where Robert confronts his changing financial reality. He remembers when a cart full of groceries cost $75 and now finds himself spending $125 for the same items. He switches from name brands to store brands, then from store brands to generic options. He buys day-old bread and marked-down produce, habits that save money but reinforce his feeling of financial decline. His utility bills create monthly anxiety cycles as Robert watches his electricity and gas usage obsessively. He keeps the thermostat at 65 degrees in winter and 78 degrees in summer, temperatures that save money but reduce his comfort. He unplugs appliances when not in use and turns off lights as he moves through his house. These conservation efforts save small amounts of money but consume significant mental energy as he constantly monitors and adjusts his usage. The shame Robert feels about his financial anxiety runs deeper than the actual money concerns. He worked hard for 4 decades, saved consistently, and planned for retirement responsibly. The financial security he built should provide peace of mind, but instead he feels like he's failing at managing money in retirement. He watches financial news and reads articles about seniors living comfortably, wondering why he can't shake the constant worry about expenses. Robert's medication decisions reveal how financial anxiety can become dangerous. When his doctor prescribes a new medication for his arthritis that costs $67 per month, Robert fills the prescription once, then stretches the pills by taking them every other day instead of daily. He doesn't tell his doctor about this adjustment because he's embarrassed to admit the cost concerns him. The reduced effectiveness of the medication leads to increased pain, but he convinces himself he's being financially responsible. The psychological burden of financial anxiety often exceeds the actual financial risk. Robert's savings account provides a substantial buffer for unexpected expenses, and his monthly income covers his basic needs with room to spare. Yet his mind operates in constant crisis mode, treating every expenditure as a potential threat to his security. Research confirms that financial stress leads to poor sleep quality, with 19% of seniors reporting worse sleep due to money worries, creating a cycle where anxiety disrupts rest and poor sleep increases anxiety. Robert's financial anxiety can be managed through budgeting strategies that provide clear spending guidelines and perspective shifts that separate emotional reactions from financial reality. Creating specific categories for entertainment, gifts, and discretionary spending can reduce the decision fatigue that makes every purchase feel like a major financial choice. But financial stress often intertwines with other daily burdens that seniors face, creating layers of complexity that extend far beyond money management. The medication maze nobody talks about. One of the most overwhelming daily challenges emerges from what should be a simple routine: taking medication. Margaret's kitchen counter looks like a small pharmacy exploded. 12 prescription bottles line up in front of a coffee maker, each with labels containing instructions that seem designed to confuse rather than clarify. Take with food. Take on empty stomach. Take 2 hours before meals. Take at bedtime unless you experience dizziness. Don't take with calcium. Avoid grapefruit. May cause drowsiness or insomnia. The contradictions pile up like a cruel joke, and Margaret stares at them every morning wondering how she's supposed to follow instructions that seem to cancel each other out. Her blood pressure medication needs to be taken first thing in the morning, but her stomach medication requires food, and her thyroid pill must be taken on an empty stomach an hour before eating. Her diabetes medication goes with breakfast, but her cholesterol pill works best at dinner. Her arthritis medication can upset her stomach, so it needs food, but not the same meal as her iron supplement because they interfere with each other. Margaret has become a human chemistry experiment, trying to time and space medications to avoid dangerous interactions while ensuring each one works effectively. Seniors now average 8 medications daily, transforming medication management from a simple routine into a complex coordination challenge that requires military precision and pharmaceutical knowledge most people don't possess. These aren't just prescriptions from one doctor treating one condition. Margaret sees a cardiologist for her heart, an endocrinologist for her diabetes, a rheumatologist for her arthritis, an orthopedist for her back pain, and a psychiatrist for the depression that developed after her husband died. Each specialist prescribes medications within their expertise, but nobody takes responsibility for managing the interactions between all the drugs Margaret swallows daily. Her weekly pill organizer has become the most important item in her house. She spends every Sunday afternoon sorting medications into tiny compartments marked with days and times. Morning, noon, evening, bedtime. The ritual takes 45 minutes because she double-checks each pill against the bottles, counts carefully, and reviews the timing requirements. One mistake could mean taking her blood thinner twice or missing her heart medication entirely. The weight of this responsibility sits on her shoulders constantly because she lives alone and has no backup system if she makes an error. Margaret's insurance changes which medications they cover without warning, forcing her to switch between brand names and generics that look completely different but supposedly work the same way. Last month, her insurance stopped covering her preferred diabetes medication and substituted a generic version that comes in different colored pills. The pharmacist assured her they're identical, but Margaret spent 3 weeks convinced she was taking the wrong medication because the pills looked nothing like what she'd been taking for 2 years. Medication errors among seniors living alone represent a dangerous reality that most families don't fully understand. Margaret accidentally took her morning medications twice last Tuesday because she couldn't remember if she'd already taken them. The duplicate dose of her blood pressure medication made her dizzy and nauseous for the entire day, but she didn't call anyone because she felt embarrassed about the mistake. She's developed a system of moving pill bottles from one side of the counter to the other after taking them. But on busy mornings or when she's distracted, the system breaks down. The side effects from multiple medications create a cascade of new health problems that require additional medications. Margaret's blood pressure medication causes ankle swelling, so her doctor prescribed a diuretic. The diuretic depletes her potassium, requiring a potassium supplement. The potassium supplement upsets her stomach, leading to an acid reducer. Each solution creates new problems that require pharmaceutical fixes, building a house of chemical cards that grows more unstable with each addition. The financial pressure of medication costs forces Margaret into impossible choices between health needs and other essential expenses. When her insurance stopped covering her arthritis medication, the monthly cost jumped to $347. She tried stretching the pills by taking them every other day instead of daily, but the increased joint pain made simple tasks like opening jars and climbing stairs excruciating. She eventually asked a doctor for samples and generic alternatives, but the reduced effectiveness meant accepting a lower quality of life to maintain financial stability. Margaret quietly discontinued her expensive cholesterol medication 6 months ago because the monthly cost strained her budget, and she convinced herself that her other heart medications provided sufficient protection. She hasn't told her cardiologist about this decision because she's embarrassed about the financial concerns and worried he'll lecture her about the importance of following prescribed treatments. Her sleep medication creates a particularly troubling dilemma because it helps her sleep but causes morning grogginess that increases her fall risk. She's fallen twice in the past year while getting up during the night, both times when the sleep medication made her unsteady. She's afraid to stop taking it because her insomnia was unbearable, but she's equally afraid of falling and breaking a hip. Managing medications has become Margaret's part-time job, consuming hours each week coordinating pharmacy visits, insurance approvals, doctor appointments, and timing requirements. The mental energy devoted to medication management leaves less capacity for enjoying life, maintaining relationships, and pursuing interests that could improve her overall health and happiness. Yet even as Margaret struggles with the complexity of managing her health, another challenge quietly grows in the background, one that affects her emotional well-being in ways she's only beginning to recognize: the shrinking social circle crisis. This emotional isolation creates a ripple effect that touches every aspect of daily life. Dorothy sits in her living room on Thursday afternoon and realizes she hasn't spoken to another human being since Monday morning when the grocery store cashier asked if she wanted paper or plastic bags. 3 days of complete silence except for the voices coming from her television set. She talks back to the game show hosts and news anchors, but they don't respond to her comments about the weather or her opinions about the contestants. The sound of her own voice startles her because she's gone so long without using it for actual conversation. Her address book tells the story of a social circle that has steadily contracted over the past decade. Names crossed out in black ink mark friends who moved to warmer climates or assisted living facilities. Others are crossed out in red ink, marking those who passed away. Some entries have question marks beside them because Dorothy lost touch and doesn't know if they're still alive or where they might be living now. The book that once contained 47 close friends and regular acquaintances now has 12 people she could realistically call, and half of those relationships have grown distant due to circumstances beyond anyone's control. Making new friends at 74 feels like trying to learn a foreign language when everyone around you speaks fluently. Dorothy remembers how friendships formed naturally when she was younger through work colleagues, neighbors with children the same age, and shared activities that brought people together regularly. Her workplace friendships ended when she retired 8 years ago. The neighbors she knew best moved away or passed away, replaced by younger families who wave politely but don't invite her to backyard barbecues or block parties. The book club she joined disbanded when 3 members developed health problems and 2 others moved to different states. The traditional social structures that facilitated friendships throughout Dorothy's adult life have largely disappeared, leaving her without obvious places to meet people who share her interests and values. Churches have smaller congregations with fewer social activities. Community centers offer programs, but many require physical abilities Dorothy no longer possesses or transportation she can't manage. The casual interactions that once led to deeper friendships, like chatting with other parents at school events or bonding with co-workers during lunch breaks, simply don't exist in her current life structure. Dorothy's experience reflects a broader crisis affecting millions of seniors who face the frequent loss of peers and friends. This isn't about personality differences or social preferences, but about systematic changes in how communities function and how relationships are formed and maintained as people age. The pandemic accelerated Dorothy's social isolation by breaking routines and connections that took decades to build. Her weekly coffee meetings with 3 longtime friends stopped during lockdowns and never resumed because one friend developed anxiety about public spaces, another became a caregiver for her husband, and the third moved closer to her children. Dorothy's days stretch endlessly without the anchor points that social connections provide. She wakes up with no one to call about her plans for the day. She reads interesting articles in the newspaper but has no one to discuss them with. She watches movies that remind her of experiences she'd like to share, but her phone doesn't ring and she hesitates to call others, worried she might be interrupting their busier lives. Meals become solitary experiences where she eats while watching television, using the background noise to create an illusion of companionship. The silence becomes so complete that Dorothy sometimes turns on the radio in multiple rooms just to hear human voices throughout her house. She finds herself looking forward to telemarketing calls because they provide brief moments of interaction, even though she knows the callers don't actually care about her well-being. Physical limitations create additional barriers to maintaining existing friendships and forming new ones. Dorothy's arthritis makes it painful to drive at night, eliminating evening social activities and making her dependent on others for transportation. Her hearing loss makes group conversations difficult because she can't follow multiple people talking at once, leading her to avoid situations where she might feel confused or left out. Her reduced energy levels mean she can't keep up with friends who want to walk for exercise or spend long days at social events. The hidden barrier that keeps Dorothy from reaching out to family and friends is her fear of becoming a burden. She worries that calling her children too often will make them feel obligated to visit or spend time they don't have. She hesitates to ask friends for rides or companionship because she can't reciprocate the same level of help they provide. Her independence has always been important to her, but maintaining that independence now means accepting isolation rather than admitting she needs social connection and support. Dorothy's granddaughter lives 30 minutes away but works full-time and has 2 young children. Dorothy wants to be part of their lives but doesn't want to impose on their busy schedule. She assumes they don't have time for her and that asking to spend time together would create guilt and obligation. Meanwhile, her granddaughter assumes Dorothy prefers her independence and doesn't want to be bothered with the chaos of young children. Neither reaches out because both are trying to be considerate, creating a gap that widens over time. Community programs specifically designed to connect isolated seniors and intentional relationship building efforts can rebuild social connections that have been lost to time and circumstance. Senior centers with transportation services, intergenerational programs that pair seniors with younger volunteers, and neighborhood support networks can create new pathways to friendship and belonging for people like Dorothy who want connection but don't know how to find it. Yet even as social isolation deepens, many seniors face an even more complex challenge that strikes at the heart of their identity and self-worth as oncoming headlights create halos of blinding light against the dark November evening. The familiar drive home from his grandson's soccer game has become a test of nerves and willpower. Street signs blur into unreadable shapes. Lane markings disappear in the glare. Other cars seem to appear from nowhere, their red taillights multiplying like angry eyes in his peripheral vision. Frank grips the steering wheel tighter and drives 15 miles below the speed limit while cars pass him with obvious frustration. He knows he shouldn't be driving at night anymore, but admitting this means accepting that his independence is slipping away one ability at a time. The drive to maintain independence creates dangerous situations that seniors navigate daily, often choosing risk over the perceived loss of autonomy that comes with asking for help. Frank represents millions of older adults who recognize their declining abilities but continue dangerous activities because the alternative feels like surrendering control over their lives. The emotional stakes of these decisions extend far beyond practical concerns about transportation or daily tasks. They touch the core of adult identity and self-worth. Frank's relationship with driving mirrors his relationship with every other aspect of independence he's watched slip away over the past 5 years. Each lost ability feels like losing a piece of himself that defined his competence as an adult. Frank learned to drive at 16 and has been behind the wheel for 58 years. Driving represents freedom, spontaneity, and the ability to go wherever he wants whenever he chooses. When these abilities diminish, Frank doesn't just lose practical skills but loses identity markers that have defined him for decades. Research reveals the extent of this dangerous independence paradox, with 34% of seniors reporting concerns about their driving abilities yet continuing to drive because they lack alternatives. These aren't seniors who lack awareness of their limitations, but people who understand the risks and choose them over what feels like premature surrender of their autonomy. Frank knows his night vision has deteriorated. He knows his reaction time has slowed. He knows other drivers get frustrated with his cautious speed. But he also knows that giving up driving means depending on others for every trip to the grocery store, every doctor's appointment, and every social activity. Frank's internal negotiations with himself happen multiple times daily as he weighs his capabilities against his needs and desires. Should he climb the ladder to clean his gutters or pay someone else to do the job he's handled for 30 years? Can he manage the heavy snow shovel this winter, or should he hire the teenager next door? Each decision requires calculating not just physical safety but emotional consequences. The fear that asking for help will trigger family interventions and accelerated loss of autonomy keeps Frank from reaching out when he recognizes his limitations. He's heard stories from friends about adult children who overreacted to minor incidents, immediately moving parents into assisted living or taking away car keys after one fender bender. Frank worries that admitting he struggles with night driving will lead to losing his license entirely. Acknowledging that household tasks have become difficult might result in his daughter insisting he move to a retirement community. Frank's pride prevents him from using available resources and support systems that could help him maintain independence safely. His city offers senior transportation services, but using them feels like admitting defeat. The senior center provides meal programs, but Frank sees them as charity for people who can't take care of themselves. Home health aid services could help with household maintenance, but Frank views accepting help as evidence that he's failed to maintain the self-sufficiency that has always been central to his identity. The grocery delivery services his daughter suggested feel like giving up the autonomy of choosing his own food and maintaining control over his household. Frank doesn't recognize that using these services could actually preserve his independence by reducing risky driving trips and ensuring he has adequate nutrition without the physical strain of shopping. His focus on maintaining independence in familiar ways prevents him from adapting to new methods that could achieve the same goals more safely. Frank hides his struggles from family members until crisis situations force interventions that are more dramatic and disruptive than gradual transitions would have been. He doesn't mention the close calls while driving at night or the increasing difficulty he has reading street signs. He doesn't tell anyone about the day he got lost coming home from the pharmacy, a route he's driven hundreds of times. He doesn't admit that simple household tasks now make him nervous. The hidden danger of seniors concealing their limitations means that families often don't realize the extent of safety concerns until emergency situations reveal how much independence has been compromised. Frank's family assumes he's managing well because he doesn't complain or ask for help. They don't know about his night vision problems because he still drives to family gatherings, carefully timing his departure to arrive before dark and staying overnight when events run late to avoid night driving. The realization that transforms Frank's approach to independence comes from understanding that true autonomy means making informed decisions about when to accept help rather than stubbornly maintaining unsafe practices. Independence doesn't require doing everything yourself, but requires maintaining control over your choices and lifestyle even when those choices include accepting assistance. Gradual transitions that preserve dignity while ensuring safety, combined with open family communication about changing needs and available options, can help seniors like Frank navigate the independence paradox without sacrificing either safety or autonomy. The goal becomes maintaining the highest possible level of independence within the constraints of changing abilities, rather than choosing between complete independence and complete dependence. Yet even when seniors successfully balance independence with safety, they often encounter systems that seem designed to confuse rather than help, creating new challenges that test their patience and problem-solving abilities daily. The healthcare navigation nightmare. Eleanor stares at the medical bill in her hands for the fourth time today, trying to decode charges that seem written in a foreign language. Patient responsibility after insurance adjustment, co-insurance percentage, deductible remaining, provider network status differential. The numbers don't match what anyone told her during her cardiology appointment 6 weeks ago. She dials the insurance company customer service line at 9:17 a.m. and settles in for what she knows will be a marathon session of hold music and transferred calls. The automated system asks her to enter her member ID number, her date of birth, and the reason for her call using voice commands that never seem to recognize her responses correctly. After 23 minutes of repeating the same information, she finally reaches a human being who asks for all the same details again. The representative explains that her claim was processed correctly according to her plan benefits. But Eleanor doesn't understand how a 15-minute appointment with a doctor she's seen for 3 years suddenly costs $387 out of pocket when previous visits cost $35. 6 hours later, Eleanor has been transferred to 5 different departments and disconnected twice, forcing her to start the entire process over. Each representative asks for the same information, pulls up her account, places her on hold to research the claim, then either transfers her to someone else or tells her the previous person gave her incorrect information. Healthcare administration has transformed into a full-time job that requires specialized knowledge, infinite patience, and technological skills that many seniors never developed. The system that once involved simple interactions between patients and doctors now requires navigating insurance networks, prior authorizations, referral approvals, and billing procedures that change constantly. Eleanor represents millions of seniors who find themselves spending significant time managing healthcare paperwork rather than receiving actual medical care. Eleanor's cardiologist recommended she see an endocrinologist for her diabetes management, but obtaining the referral requires calling her primary care doctor's office, waiting for them to contact the cardiologist for consultation notes, then submitting a referral request to her insurance company for approval. The process takes 3 weeks, during which her blood sugar remains poorly controlled. When the referral is finally approved, the earliest available appointment with an in-network endocrinologist is 4 months away. Telehealth appointments, introduced as a convenience during the pandemic, have created new technological barriers for seniors like Eleanor who struggle with video calling platforms, smartphone apps, and digital check-in procedures. Her rheumatologist's office now requires patients to download an app, create an account, verify their insurance information online, and complete symptom questionnaires before virtual appointments. Eleanor spent 45 minutes trying to figure out how to join her video appointment, missing the first 15 minutes while the doctor waited in the virtual waiting room. The complexity of medical terminology and procedures leaves Eleanor feeling lost during appointments with specialists who assume she understands concepts they learned in medical school. Her nephrologist explains that her kidney function has decreased to stage 3 chronic kidney disease, but Eleanor doesn't know what that means for her daily life, her other medications, or her long-term prognosis. She nods and smiles during the explanation, afraid to admit she doesn't understand, then leaves the appointment with more questions than answers. Healthcare providers operating under time pressures often rush through appointments, leaving seniors with unanswered questions and incomplete understanding of their conditions and treatments. Eleanor's appointments feel like speed dating sessions where she barely has time to describe her symptoms before the doctor is writing prescriptions and scheduling follow-up visits. She prepares lists of questions before each appointment, but rarely gets through more than 2 or 3 before the doctor is moving toward the door. The stress of advocating for herself in a system she doesn't understand takes a toll on Eleanor's mental and physical health. She dreads medical appointments because they make her feel stupid and helpless. She postpones scheduling routine screenings because the process of obtaining authorization and finding in-network providers feels overwhelming. Her blood pressure spikes every time she has to call her insurance company or dispute a medical bill. Eleanor has started avoiding necessary medical care because navigating the healthcare system has become more stressful than living with her symptoms. Her primary care doctor recommended a colonoscopy, but the pre-authorization process requires multiple phone calls, a consultation with a gastroenterologist, and coordination between 3 different medical offices. Eleanor decides to postpone the screening indefinitely rather than deal with the administrative nightmare. The hidden problem of seniors avoiding healthcare due to system complexity means that serious conditions go undiagnosed and manageable problems become major health crises. Research shows that 29% of seniors skip necessary care due to administrative complexity, creating health risks that extend far beyond the original medical concerns. Eleanor's friend Martha stopped taking her blood pressure medication because her insurance stopped covering it, and the process of getting approval for an alternative medication required paperwork she couldn't complete. Martha's untreated hypertension led to a stroke that could have been prevented with proper medication management. Healthcare navigation has become a specialized skill that requires understanding insurance terminology, medical coding, provider networks, and administrative procedures that change frequently. Eleanor worked as a school administrator for 35 years, managing complex systems and solving problems daily. But healthcare administration operates by rules that seem illogical and inconsistent. The skills that made her successful in her career don't translate to understanding why her mammogram is covered at 100%, but her bone density scan requires a $150 copayment. The psychological impact of feeling lost in the healthcare system undermines Eleanor's confidence in her ability to manage her health and advocate for her needs. She questions whether she's asking the right questions, choosing the right doctors, or making informed decisions about her care. The complexity of the system makes her feel like she needs an advanced degree in healthcare administration just to be a patient. patient advocates who specialize in healthcare navigation and simplified systems that prioritize patient understanding over administrative efficiency can help seniors like Eleanor access the care they need without spending their lives managing healthcare bureaucracy. Yet even when seniors successfully navigate these complex systems, they often face another challenge that strikes at the very core of their identity and mental confidence: the memory fear that controls everything. Helen stands at her mailbox on Tuesday morning, staring at the woman walking toward her with a friendly wave. The face looks completely familiar. The smile is warm and genuine. This person clearly knows Helen well, but Helen's mind goes completely blank when she tries to recall the name. She's lived next door to this woman for 20 years, but in this moment, Helen can't retrieve her neighbor's name from the filing cabinet in her brain that seems to have developed a faulty lock. The panic that floods Helen's chest isn't proportional to forgetting a name. Everyone forgets names occasionally, even young people. But for Helen, this moment represents something terrifying. She smiles and waves back, hoping the conversation stays brief so she won't need to use a name she can't remember. Her heart pounds as she wonders if this is how dementia begins, with familiar faces becoming nameless strangers and 20-year relationships dissolving into awkward encounters with people she should know but suddenly doesn't. Normal, age-related. Memory changes create anxiety that far exceeds the actual impact of these changes on daily functioning. Helen's brain processes and stores information slightly differently at 76 than it did at 46. Names, dates, and specific details require more effort to retrieve. Multitasking becomes more challenging. New information takes longer to encode into long-term memory. These changes are normal parts of aging, similar to how reading glasses become necessary or how climbing stairs takes more effort. But Helen experiences each memory lapse as potential evidence of cognitive decline that will eventually rob her of her identity and independence. Helen's daily routine now includes constant memory testing and self-evaluation. She quizzes herself on recent conversations, trying to recall exactly what her daughter told her about her grandson's school project. She reviews her grocery list multiple times, testing whether she can remember all the items without looking. When she watches the news, she challenges herself to summarize the stories afterward, checking her recall accuracy. These mental exercises consume enormous amounts of energy and create anxiety when her performance doesn't meet her expectations. The hypervigilance extends to monitoring other people's reactions to her words and behavior. Helen watches her children's faces during conversations, searching for signs that they're concerned about her mental sharpness. She analyzes their tone of voice for patience or condescension. When her son asks her to repeat something she said, Helen interprets this as evidence that her speech was confused or unclear. She second-guesses her own perceptions and memories, constantly seeking verification from others about events and conversations. Fear of dementia affects seniors widely, often creating more daily distress than actual memory changes. This fear operates independently of cognitive function, meaning seniors with excellent mental abilities experience as much anxiety as those with genuine memory concerns. Helen represents millions of older adults whose fear of memory loss has become more debilitating than any actual cognitive changes they're experiencing. The irony of Helen's situation is that her fear of memory loss leads to behaviors that actually increase her risk of cognitive decline. She withdraws from social activities because she's afraid of embarrassing herself by forgetting names or losing track of conversations. She stops reading challenging books because she worries about not remembering plot details. She avoids learning new skills because the initial confusion and mistakes feel like evidence of cognitive failure. The mental stimulation that protects brain health gets eliminated in service of avoiding situations that might reveal memory problems. Helen's social withdrawal accelerates when she starts declining invitations to book club meetings, bridge games, and family gatherings. Each avoided social interaction reduces the cognitive exercise that comes from conversation, problem-solving, and relationship maintenance. Her world contracts as she chooses safe, familiar activities over stimulating challenges that might expose memory limitations. The isolation that results from this withdrawal creates depression and anxiety that further impact cognitive function. The exhaustion of constantly monitoring and evaluating her mental performance drains Helen's energy and enjoyment of daily activities. She can't watch a movie without testing her ability to follow the plot. She can't have a phone conversation without analyzing her word recall and sentence structure. Every interaction becomes a performance evaluation where she judges her cognitive adequacy. The mental resources devoted to this self-monitoring reduce the brain power available for actually processing and enjoying experiences. Helen's family members amplify her fears through their well-meaning concern and protective behaviors. When she mentions forgetting where she put her keys, her daughter's worried expression and immediate questions about other memory problems increase Helen's anxiety. Her son's suggestions about writing things down or using memory aids feel like evidence that he's noticed cognitive decline. Family members who repeat information or speak more slowly, thinking they're being helpful, reinforce Helen's belief that her mental capacity is obviously compromised. The impact on Helen's decision-making ability extends far beyond memory concerns. She postpones major decisions about her living situation, finances, and healthcare because she doubts her judgment and analytical abilities. She defers to family members' opinions more frequently, not because she lacks insight, but because she's lost confidence in her mental clarity. Important choices about her future get delayed or avoided entirely as Helen questions whether she's capable of making sound decisions. The hidden tragedy of Helen's situation is that her actual memory function remains largely intact while her fear of memory loss controls every aspect of her daily life. She's created a prison of anxiety that prevents her from engaging fully with life, relationships, and activities that could enhance her cognitive health and overall well-being. Understanding the difference between normal age-related memory changes and symptoms that warrant medical attention can dramatically reduce anxiety and improve quality of life. Helen's occasional name retrieval difficulties and slower information processing are typical aging changes, not early signs of dementia. Recognition of normal aging patterns, combined with strategies for managing memory concerns, can help seniors like Helen reclaim confidence in their cognitive abilities and re-engage with life fully rather than fearfully. Yet while Helen struggles with fears about her mental capacity, many seniors face a different kind of emotional burden that society rarely acknowledges or understands. The grief that never gets acknowledged. William sits in his recliner on a Sunday afternoon surrounded by sympathy cards that arrived too late and funeral programs that pile up like autumn leaves. His wife Margaret died in January after 62 years of marriage. His best friend Charlie passed in March from a heart attack that came without warning. His younger brother Tom succumbed to cancer in August, fighting for 6 months before surrendering to a disease that consumed him slowly. 3 people who knew William's entire life story, who shared his memories and understood his references, who called him by childhood nicknames and remembered events that shaped him into the man he became. Gone within 8 months of each other, leaving him holding conversations with empty chairs and dialing phone numbers that no longer connect to familiar voices. The accumulation of loss that seniors face creates a grief experience that younger people rarely encounter and struggle to understand. William's generation is dying around him in ways that feel both natural and devastating. These aren't unexpected tragedies that shock communities, but predictable passages that everyone sees coming yet nobody knows how to prepare for emotionally. The friends who shared his military service, his career challenges, his child-rearing years, and his retirement dreams are disappearing one by one, taking pieces of his personal history with them. Each funeral William attends reminds him of his own mortality while simultaneously removing another person who understood his life from a shared perspective. When Margaret died, he lost his daily companion and the person who knew his routines, preferences, and unspoken thoughts accumulated over 6 decades together. When Charlie passed, he lost his fishing partner and the friend who remembered their first jobs, their young families, and their dreams of retirement adventures they'll never take together. When Tom died, he lost his last sibling and the only person who shared childhood memories of their parents, their family traditions, and the experiences that shaped their values. William's grief multiplies because he's simultaneously mourning individual relationships and watching his entire social world disintegrate. The poker game that ran for 23 years ended when 3 of the 6 regular players died within 18 months. The coffee group that met every Tuesday morning at the diner disbanded when half the members moved to assisted living or became too ill to participate. The church Sunday school class he taught for 15 years dissolved when attendance dropped from 12 couples to 3 individuals whose spouses had passed away. Seniors witness many peer deaths each year, creating an emotional reality that younger generations don't experience. William's address book contains more crossed-out names than active phone numbers. His Christmas card list gets shorter every year as recipients die or become too ill to maintain correspondence. This systematic loss of contemporaries creates a unique form of grief that compounds with each passing. Society expects seniors to be accustomed to loss, dismissing their grief as a normal part of aging rather than recognizing the unique pain of losing contemporaries who shared formative experiences. When William's co-workers offer condolences, they often add comments about how he should be grateful for the time he had or how he's lucky to have reached an age where he has so many memories. These well-meaning responses minimize his grief and suggest that losing lifelong companions should be easier because he's old enough to expect such losses. The compound effect of multiple losses creates a grief burden that affects William's mental health and will to live in ways that single losses don't produce. Each death reminds him of previous losses while adding new pain to an already heavy emotional load. He finds himself crying not just for Tom, but for Margaret and Charlie, and the accumulated weight of saying goodbye to people who defined his social world. The grief doesn't resolve between losses but accumulates like sediment, building layers of sadness that make each new loss more difficult to bear. William's confrontation with mortality intensifies as he watches contemporaries die and recognizes his own place in line. Every funeral serves as a preview of his own ending, forcing him to consider questions about his remaining time, his legacy, and his preparedness for death. The people dying around him aren't distant acquaintances but peers who shared his health challenges, his lifestyle, and his life expectancy. Their deaths feel like warnings about his own future that he can't ignore or dismiss. The challenge of grieving alone becomes overwhelming when William's support system consists of people who are also dying or dealing with their own grief and health problems. The friends who would normally help him process Margaret's death are struggling with their own losses or battling illnesses that consume their emotional energy. His remaining brother lives across the country and has his own health concerns. His adult children care about his well-being but don't understand the unique nature of losing peers who shared experiences from decades before the children were born. William's grief gets complicated by survivor guilt as he questions why he remains alive while healthier, younger, or seemingly happier people have died around him. He wonders if he should have died first, sparing Margaret the pain of widowhood. He feels guilty about moments when he forgets his grief and experiences brief happiness, as if joy dishonors the memory of people he's lost. The arbitrary nature of who lives and who dies creates existential questions that have no satisfying answers. The unique aspects of senior grief include mourning not just individuals but entire eras of shared experience. When William's army buddy died last year, he lost the only person who remembered specific details about their deployment, their sergeant's peculiar habits, and the jokes that sustained them through difficult times. These shared memories die with the people who lived them, creating a form of historical grief that younger people don't experience because their peer groups remain largely intact. Senior grief often goes unacknowledged because society views death in old age as natural and expected rather than tragic and worthy of sympathy. William receives fewer sympathy cards when his elderly friends die than his children received when their middle-aged colleagues passed away. The assumption that senior deaths are somehow less common minimizes the very real grief that survivors experience. The isolation that results from accumulated loss creates additional health risks, as research shows that social isolation doubles mortality risk for seniors. William's shrinking social circle doesn't just affect his emotional well-being, but threatens his physical health and longevity. Each lost relationship removes a source of social connection that protects against depression, cognitive decline, and premature death. Grief support specifically designed for seniors who are experiencing multiple losses and acknowledgement that senior grief is both complex and valid can help people like William process their pain and find meaning in their remaining relationships and experiences. Yet even as William struggles with the weight of accumulated loss, he faces another challenge that strikes at his sense of belonging in a world that seems to have moved beyond his understanding. Arthur sits at the kitchen table during Sunday dinner while his family discusses something called going viral and debates whether someone should cancel a celebrity he's never heard of. His grandson mentions cryptocurrency investments and NFTs while his daughter talks about her side hustle selling products through social media influencers. The conversation flows around Arthur like a river around a stone, carrying energy and excitement that he can't access because he doesn't understand the language everyone else speaks fluently. He nods occasionally and smiles when others laugh, but he feels like a tourist in his own family gathering, observing a culture that developed while he wasn't looking. The world has transformed at a pace that leaves many seniors feeling like they went to sleep in one century and woke up in another. Technology, social customs, entertainment, and communication methods have evolved so rapidly that the gap between generations feels unbridgeable at times. Arthur remembers when phones were attached to walls and conversations happened face to face. Now his family communicates through platforms he's never used, shares experiences through apps he doesn't understand, and finds entertainment in formats that didn't exist when he was learning how the world works. Arthur's daily experience includes constant reminders that he's disconnected from the cultural mainstream. He watches television shows that reference memes he's never seen, social media trends he doesn't follow, and current events that seem to happen exclusively online. News anchors discuss topics using terminology that sounds like foreign language. Entertainment programs feature celebrities he doesn't recognize talking about controversies he doesn't understand. Even commercials assume knowledge of technological concepts and social media platforms that remain mysteries to him. The feeling of cultural displacement affects many seniors who report feeling like the world has moved on without them, creating a sense of obsolescence that impacts their willingness to participate in family conversations, community activities, and social gatherings. Arthur represents millions of older adults who possess decades of wisdom and experience but feel irrelevant in discussions about modern life. This perceived irrelevance affects Arthur's self-worth and motivation to engage with life in ways that compound over time. When family members discuss their work challenges, Arthur's decades of business experience feel outdated because the problems involve technologies and workplace cultures that didn't exist during his career. His advice about perseverance, problem-solving, and relationship management gets dismissed as old-fashioned wisdom that doesn't apply to modern situations. He stops offering input because his contributions feel unwelcome or irrelevant. The pain of feeling like his experiences and wisdom are no longer valued creates a deep sense of loss that goes beyond simple generational differences. Arthur worked for 43 years in manufacturing, solving complex problems and managing teams through economic downturns, technological changes, and industry consolidation. His knowledge about leadership, crisis management, and long-term planning could benefit younger family members. But the context of his experience feels so different from their current challenges that his insights get overlooked or dismissed. Arthur's grandson asks for help with a school project about the 1970s, treating that decade like ancient history even though Arthur lived through it as a young adult. The questions focus on major events and cultural phenomena that Arthur remembers as background noise to his daily life of working, raising children, and building a career. His grandson wants facts and dates for a report, but Arthur's personal experiences include the texture of daily life and the human impact of historical events that don't fit into neat categories for school assignments. Intergenerational communication breaks down when cultural gaps become too wide for meaningful connection. Arthur's stories about his work experience get interrupted by family members who explain that modern workplaces operate completely differently. His observations about social changes get dismissed as outdated perspectives that don't account for current realities. His attempts to relate current events to historical patterns fall flat because younger family members don't see the connections between past and present situations. Arthur's hidden desire to contribute to family discussions and community activities gets frustrated by his uncertainty about how to participate meaningfully in modern contexts. He wants to help his daughter navigate workplace politics, but her challenges involve remote work, digital collaboration, and corporate cultures that didn't exist when he was managing people. He wants to support his grandson's entrepreneurial ambitions, but the business models involve online marketing, social media presence, and technological platforms that seem incomprehensible. The rapid pace of technological change creates a moving target that makes it difficult for seniors to catch up even when they're motivated to learn. Arthur bought a smartphone and learned basic functions, but by the time he became comfortable with texting and email, his family had moved on to video calling, social media messaging, and app-based communication. The skills he develops become obsolete before he masters them, creating a permanent sense of being behind and unable to catch up. Arthur's feeling of invisibility grows stronger when conversations shift to topics that require cultural knowledge he doesn't possess. References to viral videos, social media personalities, and online trends create inside jokes and shared experiences that exclude him from the group dynamic. His family doesn't intentionally exclude him, but their natural conversation patterns assume familiarity with cultural touchstones that exist outside his experience. The realization that wisdom and experience remain valuable despite technological change offers hope for bridging generational gaps. Arthur's insights about human nature, relationship dynamics, and life priorities don't become outdated when communication methods change. His understanding of perseverance, integrity, and long-term thinking applies to modern challenges even when the specific context looks different. The principles he learned through decades of experience remain relevant to younger generations who face similar fundamental challenges in new formats. Bridging generational gaps requires intentional effort from both sides to find common ground and translate experiences across cultural divides. Arthur's family could benefit from his perspective on patience, persistence, and finding meaning in work, while Arthur could learn about modern communication methods and cultural changes that would help him participate more fully in family conversations. Finding new ways to contribute that honor both traditional wisdom and contemporary realities can restore Arthur's sense of purpose and connection to the world around him. Yet even when seniors successfully navigate cultural changes and maintain family connections, they often discover that the physical spaces they've called home for decades present entirely new challenges that threaten their independence and financial security. The housing dilemma nobody prepared for. Patricia stands in her living room looking at the water stain on the ceiling that appeared after last month's ice storm. The brown mark spreads across the white paint like a map of somewhere she doesn't want to visit. She called 3 roofing contractors, but only one returned her call, and his estimate of $8,400 made her stomach drop. The furnace repair last winter cost $2,100. The driveway needs resurfacing at $3,800. The electrical panel that the home inspector flagged as outdated requires $4,200 to bring up to code. Patricia's house has become a money pit that swallows her fixed income while trapping her inside walls that once meant security but now feel like prison bars. This 4-bedroom colonial raised her 3 children and housed 37 years of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, and family gatherings. Every room holds memories that feel too precious to abandon. The kitchen where she taught her daughter to bake cookies. The basement where her sons built model airplanes. The backyard where grandchildren learned to ride bicycles and played hide-and-seek during summer visits. Leaving this house means leaving the physical spaces where her most important life moments happened. But staying means confronting daily reminders of her declining ability to maintain what she once managed effortlessly. The upstairs bedrooms she no longer uses because climbing stairs hurts her knees. The basement laundry room that requires navigating steep steps with heavy baskets. The large yard that once brought joy now demands landscaping costs she can't afford and physical maintenance she can't handle. The house designed for a family of 5 feels overwhelming for one person whose energy and strength have diminished with age. Patricia's situation reflects a housing crisis affecting many seniors who find themselves trapped between unsuitable living situations and limited alternatives. These aren't people who made poor housing decisions, but individuals whose circumstances changed while their homes remained static. The multi-story layouts, maintenance requirements, and operating costs that worked perfectly for younger families become obstacles for aging adults living on fixed incomes. Home maintenance transforms from routine upkeep into overwhelming challenges that consume both money and peace of mind. Patricia's gutters need cleaning twice yearly, but hiring professionals costs $300 each time. The windows require washing inside and out, a task that once took her a Saturday morning but now requires hiring a service for $180. Snow removal, lawn care, and seasonal maintenance add up to thousands of dollars annually for services she used to handle herself. Each maintenance issue becomes a financial crisis that forces choices between home repairs and other essential expenses. The emotional attachment to homes where decades of memories accumulated makes the decision to move feel like betraying family history and personal identity. Patricia's dining room table witnessed homework sessions, holiday meals, and heart-to-heart conversations that shaped her children's lives. Her garden holds rose bushes planted to commemorate anniversaries and trees planted when grandchildren were born. The photo albums documenting family milestones show these same rooms and spaces as backdrops for celebrations, achievements, and ordinary moments that became treasured memories. Housing alternatives seem either unaffordable or undesirable when Patricia investigates her options. Assisted living facilities cost $4,200 monthly, more than her entire retirement income. Independent living communities require entrance fees of $150,000 plus monthly charges that exceed her housing budget. Condominiums in her area cost more than her house is worth, eliminating the possibility of downsizing without taking on debt. Apartments designed for seniors have waiting lists extending 2 years and locations far from her established community connections. The impossible mathematics of senior housing create situations where staying becomes the only option despite increasing unsuitability. Patricia's house is worth $187,000, but comparable homes in her area cost $220,000 or more. Moving would require paying closing costs, moving expenses, and potentially higher monthly housing costs while losing the equity built up over decades. The transaction costs alone would consume $15,000 to $20,000 of her limited savings, money she needs for emergencies and unexpected expenses. Patricia becomes house poor as her fixed income gets consumed by maintaining a home that no longer serves her needs effectively. Her property taxes increased 18% over the past 3 years while her pension remained flat. Utility bills for heating and cooling 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms strain her budget when she uses only 2 rooms regularly. Insurance premiums rise annually as the house ages and weather-related claims increase in her area. The money spent maintaining unsuitable housing could fund activities, healthcare, and experiences that would improve her quality of life. The stress of managing an overwhelming property affects Patricia's health and social connections in ways that compound her isolation. She spends entire days dealing with repair estimates, contractor schedules, and maintenance decisions instead of participating in activities she enjoys. Friends stop visiting because Patricia seems constantly preoccupied with home repairs and financial worries. Her conversations revolve around maintenance problems and expenses, making social interactions feel like problem-solving sessions rather than enjoyable connections. Patricia's heating bills force her to keep the thermostat at 62 degrees during winter months, making her house uncomfortably cold for entertaining guests or enjoying relaxing evenings. She closes off unused rooms to reduce heating costs, but this makes the house feel smaller and more confining. The money spent on emergency repairs eliminates her budget for travel, entertainment, and gifts for family members. Her house has become a financial and emotional burden that prevents her from enjoying retirement activities and maintaining relationships. The hidden problem of seniors becoming house poor affects more than individual finances because it impacts family relationships and community connections. Patricia's adult children worry about her living situation but can't afford to help with major repairs or housing transitions. Her grandchildren visit less frequently because Patricia can't afford to host meals or provide comfortable accommodations. The community loses an active member because Patricia's time and money get consumed by housing maintenance rather than volunteer activities and social participation. Housing decisions affect every aspect of Patricia's well-being, including her physical safety, financial security, social connections, and mental health. The house that once provided stability now creates stress that impacts her sleep, appetite, and overall health. The maintenance demands reduce her physical activity and social engagement, while the financial pressure creates anxiety about her long-term security. Early planning and exploring all available housing options can help seniors find suitable solutions before crisis situations force hasty decisions. Patricia's situation could improve through housing counseling services, reverse mortgage options, home modification programs, and community resources designed to help seniors age in place safely and affordably. Yet even when housing challenges are resolved, Many seniors discover that the physical structure of their living situation represents only one piece of a larger puzzle about how to spend their remaining years meaningfully. The purpose void after retirement. Finding meaningful ways to spend time becomes the central challenge that determines whether retirement feels like freedom or imprisonment. James describes his retirement as a long weekend that never ends. And the phrase captures something most retirement planning never addresses. He retired 3 years ago from his job as a plant supervisor at a manufacturing company where he worked for 38 years. The farewell party was nice. The gold watch sits on his dresser. The pension checks arrive monthly. But the days stretch ahead of him like an endless corridor with no destination in sight. He wakes up at 6 a.m. because his body clock still runs on work time. But there's nowhere to go and nothing that needs his immediate attention. The loss of work identity creates an existential crisis that catches many seniors completely off guard. James defined himself through his professional role for nearly 4 decades. He was the guy who solved production problems, managed difficult employees, and kept the plant running smoothly during equipment breakdowns and supply shortages. Co-workers came to him for advice. His supervisors relied on his expertise. His paycheck reflected his value to the organization. Now he's just another retiree with no title, no responsibilities, and no clear sense of what he's supposed to do with the remaining years of his life. The daily struggle of finding meaning becomes overwhelming when career achievements feel distant and irrelevant to current reality. James spent decades building expertise in manufacturing processes, quality control, and team management. He could troubleshoot complex machinery, optimize production schedules, and navigate union negotiations. But these skills feel useless in retirement when nobody needs his knowledge and experience. The accomplishments that once brought satisfaction now seem like ancient history that has no bearing on his present circumstances. James represents a broader crisis affecting millions of retirees who discover that financial preparation doesn't address the psychological challenges of leaving careers that provided identity and purpose. Many seniors report feeling purposeless years after retirement, indicating that the adjustment period extends far beyond the initial transition. These aren't people who hated their jobs or couldn't wait to retire, but individuals who found meaning and satisfaction in their work roles. The structure that work provided disappears overnight, leaving James without the framework that organized his days and gave them direction. He used to have meetings to attend, problems to solve, and deadlines to meet. His calendar stayed full with training sessions, budget reviews, and project planning. Now his days have no external structure or built-in purpose. He can stay in bed until noon or watch television all day without anyone caring or noticing. The freedom he thought he wanted feels more like aimlessness. Social connections that developed through work relationships also vanish when James retires. His closest friendships were with colleagues who shared the daily challenges and victories of keeping the plant operating efficiently. They understood his work stories, appreciated his expertise, and included him in their professional and personal networks. Retirement severed these connections abruptly. His former co-workers moved on to new challenges, while James found himself excluded from the workplace community that had been his primary social environment. The challenge of reinventing yourself at 68 feels overwhelming when society views seniors as past their prime. James considers volunteering but worries that organizations will see him as out of touch with modern methods and technology. He thinks about starting a small business but assumes potential customers will prefer younger entrepreneurs. The ageism he encounters makes him question whether he has anything valuable to offer in a world that seems designed for younger people. James's attempts to find new activities and interests get frustrated by his uncertainty about what brings him satisfaction. Work provided clear goals and measurable outcomes. He knew when he had succeeded and when he had failed. Now he tries different hobbies and activities, but nothing creates the same sense of accomplishment and purpose that his job provided. Gardening, woodworking, and reading fill time but don't fill the void left by meaningful work. Financial concerns limit James's ability to pursue activities that might provide purpose and fulfillment. His retirement income covers basic living expenses but doesn't allow for expensive hobbies, travel, or volunteer work that require significant financial contributions. He wants to take woodworking classes, but the equipment and materials cost more than his discretionary budget allows. He considers volunteering for organizations that require travel or special training, but can't afford the associated expenses. The hidden depression that develops from feeling unneeded and unproductive affects James's energy and motivation in ways that compound his sense of purposelessness. He sleeps later because he has no reason to get up early. He skips meals because cooking for one person feels pointless. He avoids social situations because he doesn't know how to answer questions about what he's doing with his retirement. The depression feeds on itself, making it harder to find the energy needed to explore new sources of meaning and connection. James's experience reflects a fundamental misunderstanding about retirement that treats it as an ending rather than a transition to a new phase of life. The cultural narrative about retirement focuses on relaxation and leisure, but ignores the human need for purpose, contribution, and growth. James didn't retire because he wanted to stop working, but because he reached the age when retirement was expected and financially feasible. Finding new sources of meaning and contribution can transform the senior years from decline into renaissance. James's manufacturing expertise could benefit non-profit organizations, small businesses, or educational institutions that need his knowledge and experience. His leadership skills could serve community organizations, religious groups, or volunteer programs that require coordination and management. His desire to contribute something valuable to society could be channeled into mentoring, teaching, or consulting roles that honor his expertise while providing new challenges and growth opportunities. The transformation James needs requires recognizing that purpose must be actively cultivated rather than passively discovered. But this realization often comes only after families and seniors themselves acknowledge that these daily struggles represent problems with solutions rather than inevitable consequences of aging. Recognition opens the door to transformation. These 12 struggles aren't written in stone as inevitable parts of getting older. They're challenges that can be tackled head-on when families recognize what's really happening behind closed doors. Julie learned to use her smartphone with patient help from her granddaughter. Robert found peace through budgeting that separated needs from wants. Margaret simplified her medication routine with her doctor's guidance. Every single problem we've explored has solutions that work when people stop suffering in silence. Here's what you can do right now. Choose one senior in your life and help them master one specific technology function this week. Show them how to video call, send a photo, or join a family group chat. Start small and be patient. Understanding these problems creates the foundation for building support systems that help seniors thrive instead of just surviving their golden years.